Well, there are a few days on the NFL offseason calendar that are as exciting as NFL schedule release day. You got the draft and NFL free agency, but there's nothing like when your team unveils their season for the fall and you can start looking for tickets. And that's what the Las Vegas Raiders did on Wednesday at 5 p.m. So let's go ahead and look into the nuggets behind this year's schedule. The Raiders will open the season at SoFi Stadium against the Chargers in Jim Harbaugh's first game as LA's head coach. Las Vegas's 63-21 stomp over the Chargers last season was the most lopsided win in franchise history. The Raiders hosted the Steelers last season. Pittsburgh will be back for another immaculate reception rematch at Allegiant. Of course, you'll get your divisional rivalry games, Raiders facing the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs twice a year. Now, after the Silver and Black shocked the Chiefs at Arrowhead on Christmas, the Raiders get the defending champs on a different holiday this year. That's Black Friday. And this is a date circled on all the Raider fans' calendars. The Raiders will visit New Orleans in Week 17 to face their longtime starting quarterback, Derek Carr. It's a revenge game for Carr that could have major playoff implications in the second-to-last game of the season. The Raiders only have one primetime game this fall, and that's in Week 15 right here at Allegiant Stadium when they face the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the last time the Raiders only had one primetime game was all the way back in 2015. But the team actually does have two national window games due to their Black Friday visit to Kansas City. The last time they had two island games like that in an entire season was 2019. So maybe a little bit of disrespect for the Raiders that I'm sure Antonio Pierce and the team will use as fuel to the fire. But let's go ahead and bring in Johnny Resendiz here for a good old conversation on our Raiders. Now, Johnny, what do you make of this season now that you get to see it Week 1 to Week 18? How confident are you?
You know what, Nick, when you first see those first two games, once again, the Raiders fans are going to have to wait 2 weeks to have something here at home. But you know what? I feel like right off the bat, we're going to see what this team is all about. You're going to go on the road in LA, on the road. As we know, Raider Nation is deep in Los Angeles, but you're going up against Jim Harbaugh's LA Chargers with a fully healthy squad. We're going to really see what they're all about. And then you have to go on the road against Baltimore. Those are going to be two big early tests for the Raiders. But you know what? I feel like this Raiders offense is going to take that next step. I think if Aiden O'Connell really is going to be the one to take that first team snaps, I think he's going to be able to build confidence. We already know he's been going to the weight room this offseason. He's been building size. He obviously is trying to build off of last year. I think he's going to take another step forward. And that defense, I mean, when Antonio Pierce got to the Raiders as the head coach, when he got promoted, they were first place in several defensive categories, was one of the best defenses overall in the NFL, and they were one of the least penalized teams overall in the league. If not, I believe, the very least penalized team. So that's a lot to build off of last season. That is a lot to do with Antonio Pierce building that winning culture here in Las Vegas, and I really think they're going to take that next step. Now, I will say this, that very middle part of the season when they got the Rams, the Chiefs, the Bengals, you got that bye week, but then you got to go at Miami. That's going to be a real gauntlet test for the Raiders.
So the Raiders were 5-4 under AP last season once he took over, once Josh McDaniels was fired. He really lit up that locker room. Now, since then, they've added Brock Bowers in the draft, Jackson Powers-Johnson to beef up the O-line. They got Christian Wilkins, one of the biggest splash signings in free agency. So now that just sets up the question. Even though we don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be in Week 1, what's that record prediction?
You know what, Nick, you and I went back and forth on this. It's a conversation that I don't think should be put on TV because of all the words, the expletives that we use. But I'm going to say that the Raiders are going to take that next step forward, and I really do think that this team wins 10 games. I think they're going to be right there in the playoff mix. They're going to go as a wild card team. I still think that the Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs. They're going to win that AFC West title, but I do think the Raiders are going to take that next step and be a playoff team. We're going to see some football. We're going to see some Raider football come January.
Now, the Raiders have only had one winning season since they moved to Las Vegas. That was in 2021 when Derek Carr led them through that turbulent season. And I'm not going to say that it's the end of the world for this Raiders team. I think they're very talented. I just believe they're going to be a fringe wild card team that's figuring out the quarterback spot throughout the season. Give me a 9-8 finish. Now, will that be good enough to make the playoffs in a very tough conference like the AFC? We shall see. But Gardner Minshew almost brought the Colts to the playoffs last season. Aiden O'Connell, despite having to go in the lineup in the middle of the year, brought the Raiders to a 5-4 finish under AP. So I believe this talented roster can make a playoff push, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Absolutely. And the best part about the NFL is you truly do not know what is going to happen. No team is the same as last year with all the turnover of the players, with trades. stuff happens, especially with a sport like football, where injuries can derail an entire season. Look at Jacksonville. They were right there on the cusp. One Trevor Lawrence injury later, they're out of the playoffs entirely. Meanwhile, you got the Browns thinking that Deshaun Watson's injury was going to derail their season. They bring back a Joe Flacco who is defying all odds and destroying Father Time right now. So I definitely think it's going to be a wait-and-see approach for the Raiders. Hey, it's May. We're getting that football itch right now.
Now, Johnny, everyone talks about the quarterback room. Everyone wants to know who's going to be behind center in week 1. But I think an X factor for this season will be the play of Zamir White, who takes over for a franchise player and a former defending league rushing champion in Josh Jacobs. And AP is a coach who wants to run the rock, and he's very vocal about that. And you have Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, all these pieces around in the offense that you'd think he'd want to air the ball out. I don't think that's AP's really his game. And so it's going to be important for that running game that also added Alexander Madison from the Vikings to get going.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's not just AP who likes to run the ball. It's Luke Getsy. He loves running the ball. We saw that again with Chicago. I feel like Zamir White is also going to be one of those guys who takes the next step. He's that smash mouth power running back that AP loves. He fits that Raiders mold. He's got experience in the NFL. We shouldn't think that he's just one of those guys who's going to come up in the starting role with not much experience. He has that experience, especially when Josh Jacobs was out last year. I definitely think that we're going to see a lot more of Zamir White. And hey, the guy's explosive. We've seen him in the locker room. He's a big dude, but he could definitely run.
For record predictions, Johnny has 10-7. I have 9-8. We'll see if that's good enough to make the playoffs. But for right now, on May 15th, still 3 months out from anything having to do with the season being played here at Allegiant, we know the schedule, and it's time to go buy your tickets. But from Allegiant Stadium, it's Johnny Resendiz and Nick Walters. We'll send it back to you.